Sales tax, tips, and commissions. These are the things that you dream about. In my mind, I keep hearing, these are the voyages of the Starship Enterprise. Too much time spent watching TV as a child. So, 3 things covered today. This is basically going to be about stuff you're going to see in Practice 6-7, the end of Chapter 6. During the chapter, we talk about ratios, talk about finding the part of a whole, finding the percents, all that sort of stuff. It's all kind of interrelated. We talked about sales tax and stuff on an earlier project at the beginning of the year. So hopefully a lot of this stuff will just be a refresher for you and hopefully just kind of, catch some things up in your mind. So let's talk about the easy stuff first. Let's talk about like a tip, okay? You go to a restaurant. Back in the day when you used to be able to go to a restaurant, have a sit-down meal and talk to people, and not like, eat outside in a bubble or in a hamster ball. The good old days. So let's say you're at a restaurant and you order a meal. Most restaurants, are expecting somewhere between 10, 15, or even 20% tip for service. Now, if you're at a large party, like you got 10 or 20 people at a party there, that's going to be a lot of work for the servers, waiters, waitresses, back and forth. And they're going to be stuck on that one table for a long time, so that means they're not going to be able to rotate tables and get additional people coming in. Because remember, you probably are going to be a waiter or a waitress and you're going to get paid like an hourly wage. Now, when the hourly wage goes up to $15 an hour, that's not too bad. But most servers and bartenders make the majority of their money on tips. I knew a guy who made like twice as much money as I do as a teacher, and I've got like 3 degrees, and he was a bartender and a waiter. And he made the majority of his money because of tips. And there'd be some nights he'd pull in $300, $400, $500 in tips. He worked at a Chili's, okay? And it wasn't like it was like super high-end 6-star Michelin-rated restaurant or something like that. But there was a lot of traffic, right? So tips work like this. If you remember how to find the percentage of something, then you can find a tip. So for example, if you talk about like a 15% tip, remember the Beyonce lesson? To the left, to the left? Yeah, if you remember that song, remember my lesson in class. Some people say when you're converting percents to decimals, you can do the multiplication or division for switching them back and forth by 100. Why? When you can just move the decimal 2 spots and you're good. So imagine the decimal is a percentage sign, unless there is a decimal present, in which case you're still doing the same thing, moving it to the left to left. So 15% becomes 0.15. At this time, now you have to go, okay, let's say I had a $55 bill. So $55 is your meal between you and whoever you're with. Or maybe just for yourself because you ordered a whole bunch and you were starving. So what is 15% of $55? Well, you're going to take 0.15, okay, and you're going to times it by 55. Now, I'm going to use a device because I want to be quick and I don't want to write all over my board and fill up all the space. 55 times 0.15 equals, $8.25. So if you're going to tip somebody based upon a 15% tip rate, 15% of $55 is $8.25. So you give them $8.25. So let's say you're still doing tips, but you're serving, let's say, a 20% tip, okay? Because some restaurants, depending on where they are, may have what they call a gratuity of 20%. It's a lot of money, especially if it's on a big bill. So let's say you go for your wedding party to this restaurant, or your rehearsal dinner or something like that, or an anniversary, an engagement. You pick your plethora of celebrations you might want to have. Okay, so 20%. Let's say you've got quite a few people. Let's say it's a really hefty bill. Let's say it's like a $2,250 bill. Okay, that's a lot of money. Okay, so they want 20% of that. Okay, well, back to the same thing. 20% is 0.20 times 2250. At the moment, you put the big number on the bottom, it should be on top. Yeah, but for our purposes of representing what you're going to be doing, it doesn't matter. So 2250 times 0.20, that's going to be a $450 tip. Okay, that's pretty sizable. Now, $450 as the tip, let's say you're splitting it among 3 waiters, okay, or 3 servers, your choice. Then that could potentially give you a pretty sizable tip for that one table, and that's probably only going to be like an hour or 2 of your shift, right? So yeah, those big groups, they can have really large gratuities, but that means you pay your $22.50 bill, and then you're going to put a 20% gratuity down on top of that, okay, which technically isn't part of your bill, Large parties almost always have a requirement for a tip or gratuity. Smaller parties, you don't have to. I mean, there's people like you can walk out and not leave a tip. Maybe the service is so terrible you don't leave a tip at all. I mean, I may have left a tip of a penny once to display my displeasure at the poor quality of service at a restaurant at one point. Yeah, I did, totally. Some people leave just a couple of bucks. It depends what it is. Generally, anywhere between 10, 15, or 20%. But again, your own financial means and how much money you have is going to determine, quite honestly, how generous of a tipper you are. You may have heard those stories of some guy leaves like an $8,000 tip around the holiday season to somebody at a restaurant or a place or things like that. That does happen. It's pretty rare, but it does happen. All right, so from the top, in order to find a tip, you convert the percent to a decimal, you times it by the bill, and that figures out your tip. It's just like finding commission we're going to talk about, and it's just like finding sales tax we're going to talk about, okay? So again, not that big of a deal, not that challenging. Let's look at sales tax. So let's say your sales tax is, let's go with 8.25%. That's a common enough tax in California. It should be, resonate with a lot of people. So 8.25% as a decimal is 0.0825. You're wondering, Bowman, how'd you come up with that number? Easy. I went over to the once, and I did the twice, and I put a decimal, and I added a 0.0825. So I converted the percent to the decimal. And I have to convert the percent to the decimal in order to do some calculations. So let's say you go on, run on Black Friday, and you buy yourself a giant new TV, and the TV is like, $1,700. So $1,700 purchase price times 0.0825. This is going to tell me the sales tax. Not going to tell me the all-in-one price, but it is going to tell me the sales tax. If you want to do the all-in-one price, there's two methods. One, you get the tax and add it back on the purchase. Or two, you put a 1 in front of that and multiply across, and that tells you the all-in-one price. But just for finding sales tax right now, 0.0825 times 1700, boom, $140.25. So 140.25. So 140.25, and that would be your tax. Now, it doesn't matter what the tax rate is. You're still going to convert the percent to a decimal and multiply that number by whatever your purchase price is. That's going to tell you the tax. If I want to find my total price, I add 140.25 plus 1,700, okay? Which is going to be a little bit more money maybe you planned on. So when you go purchasing something, here's a real common sense thing to keep in mind. You look at the purchase price and you're like, oh, I can afford that. Did you take into account tax? That can be a make or break thing for a lot of people. You go to purchase a new car. You're like, oh, I've got $20,000. And the car's like $19,999. Sweet, I can do it. No, really, you can't. Unless you're going to go into debt more, because then once the tax get added on it, the license and all those other fees, then it's going to go up probably around $23,000, $24,000 total, okay? So that's going to change things significantly for you. So do keep those things in mind. That's real-world application of stuff like this. Economic math is basic computation, but applies every single day, no matter where you go, okay? Particularly in this kind of economy. Some people are doing really well. Some people are doing really poorly. And there's a lot of people that just aren't doing, period, okay? So, percentage, convert it to decimal, times it by the purchase price, that gives you sales tax. It's just like finding the tip. Okay, now commission. Tax is where you're paying additional fees on something you're purchasing. Tip is where you're paying additional fees to a person who's been providing a service for you. And they've done a great job, or they've done a reasonable job, and you give them a tip as a recognition of their work, okay? Because remember, most service industry jobs, waiters, waitresses, things like that, particularly now while a lot of businesses are closed, they don't make huge amounts of money. They make the majority of their money on tips, and the longer they work and the more tables they can turn, the more customers they get, the more tips they pull in. So it's a little bit of a balancing act there, very sketchy. Not something I would recommend for a full-time career for people, because do you want to be like 60 years old, 65 years old, waiting tables? People do it, it can happen, but that's a lot of hard work at an older age. So these kind of jobs are very common among people for, I'm working a side job while I go to college. When I was in college, I paid for my way through college by doing plumbing and roofing in San Francisco. Always an experience. You've heard me talk about that before. Now commission. Let's talk about commission really quick. Commission is very similar to tips and sales tax. You calculate it the same way. Take the percent, convert it to decimal, multiply. Okay. Commissions oftentimes comes up when you're selling something. So let's say you're into sales. Let's say you're selling real estate. Let's say you get a 2% commission on your real estate. 2% doesn't sound like much, but that's actually a pretty good commission rate. And here's why. So let's say you sell a house that is $415,000. So the sale price on this house is $415,000. You're the representing agent, and theoretically you'd go, oh yeah, that equals 0.02. So you go 0.02 times 415,000, and you're talking $8,300. I don't know about you, but that's way bigger than the paycheck that I get when I get my paycheck every 2 weeks. But you got to pull taxes and stuff out of that. We'll talk about it a little later. But you get an $8,300 payday. Now let's say you sold 2 or 3 houses in a month. Well, if you sold 3 houses in a month, that'd be $24,900 in 1 month. And there's 12 months in a year. Realistically, you're probably not going to be able to pull that many houses and that many sales per month. You're going to have some good months, and you're going to have some bad months. So that's why if you take those good months and you make a lot, you do well, you set aside some of that money for the bad months. You have to plan ahead, okay? You ever like say instant gratification? Ooh, look, I've got $30,000. I'm going to go buy a Rolex. Ooh, look, I've made $40,000. I'm going to go buy a brand new car. Okay, but do you have enough balanced out, set aside for when it gets bad? You've got to plan ahead for things like that. Now, Mr. Bowman, stop lecturing about how I should live my life and spend my money. You're right, it's your money. You make your decision. Just throwing some experience ideas out there to you. Keep it in mind, okay? So, commission is basically, if you're in sales, you're earning money based upon the dollars of the stuff you're selling. You can get commission on things like, televisions, refrigerators, washers, dryers, cars. Cars, big time commissions. And I don't mean big time as in, oh my gosh, there's lots of money there. It can be, but the margins are pretty slim, okay? So if you can sell a lot of cars, you can get a pretty consistent rate of commission. The higher end salespeople, like for the Ferraris, Mercedes, things like that, a lot of times they don't even get commissions. A lot of times they get like a base salary, and it gets a set salary because they don't want a high pressure sales, things like that. And you know what I mean? If it's a high pressure sales, you see walk into a dealership and somebody starts jumping all over you. Hi, can I help you? What can I do? And they're like always there walking around following you around. That's high pressure. So let's say you're doing like a 1% commission. So 1% as a decimal, same thing to the left, equals 0.01. That looks like a really small, sad, lonely number, doesn't it? Okay, so let's say you're selling something that doesn't even cost that much money. It's like insignificant as far as like dollars go. Let's say you sell a $700 TV. Not that I'm saying $700 is insignificant. I couldn't like throw that down right now. Heck no. But $700 times 0.01, you made $7. All right, 7 lonely little dollars. You'd have to sell a whole bunch of freaking TVs to make it worthwhile. All right, you probably got like an hourly rate on top of it, and then you're doing some of that. Maybe you're selling washers or dryers. Maybe you're selling a refrigerator. Let's say a refrigerator. Let's say you're selling a $3,000 refrigerator of 1%. So 3,000 times 0.01. You can do this math too. That's $30. Okay, so let's say you're making $15 an hour. You're working an 8-hour day. This is all pre-tax. You're making $120 in that day. And let's say you sold 3 refrigerators. So that'd be $90. Now $90 compared to $120, you start seeing them talking about? Yeah, 1% doesn't sound like much. You sell 3 refrigerators in that day, all right? Then guess what? That means that $120 you've made on an hourly jumps up by 90, which takes you to 210. So you're almost doubling the amount of money you're taking in that one day just by selling 3 items, even at a 1% commission. So let's say you're going to a much larger sale. Let's say you're going to be working for like a food company. Let's say you work for like ConAgra, or you work for a big meat packing plant or something like that. You're selling meat to the grocery chain stores, and they're buying truckloads and truckloads of it, okay? This is actually how it works. This is what my dad did for years. Now, he didn't always get much of a commission because he was a salaried employee, but occasionally he might be able to get a bonus, like maybe once a year, and it was not bad. But let's just say you got a 2% commission on sales. All right. Pick whatever it is you're selling, I don't care, but let's say it's pretty substantial. Let's say you're selling pharmaceuticals, all right? And I'm talking about legal pharmaceuticals, things that hospitals and doctors would use, of course. Pharmaceuticals, big money involved in that stuff, okay? So let's say you're taking 2% of the sales of something like $4.5 million. What do you think 2% of $4.5 million is going to be? Well, 4, 5, 0, that's 4,500, that's 45,000, that's 450,000. Ooh, that's 4.5 million right there. So again, like we talked about, 0.02, because we got to turn it into decimal, times my 4.5 million. And that's going to give me about $90,000. Yeah, I'll just pause and let that soak in for a second. $90,000. Okay, so 2% of 4.5 million is $90,000. That's a lot of money, no matter how you cut it. Now, I threw a lot of examples out there. There's different things you can sell, and there's different things you can get commissions for. Some commissions might be higher, some commissions might be lower. Some commissions might only be like 0.25%. It just depends on what kind of sales and what kind of business you're in. Sales is a tough thing to do, depending on what you're selling, okay? Car sales can be brutal, okay? If you're the dealer and you're selling enough cars, it'd be pretty good. But if you're not selling that many cars, and look what the economy does, right? As the economy goes up and down, your sales go up and down, you know? So you've got to move those cars. If you don't keep selling them, you're not making money yourself. And if you're not making money yourself, you can't keep the employees there. So that kind of rolls around for everybody. Okay. Tips, commissions, and sales tax. Practice 6, 7. You do them all the same way. Convert the percent to a decimal, times by the number, you get your answer. Okay? Hopefully that's a quick refresher for those who needed it, and we'll talk later.